Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friend Leigh Show. I am your host and friend, Leigh. I am so happy that you guys are here. This is my favorite show. I absolutely love Wednesday nights because that means that we get to have a conversation. I also want to give a shout out to anybody that is watching in First Day Pod, so on Facebook or Twitter or X. Or YouTube or Twitch. Hello, hello. And we were going to be doing an episode of First Aid Pod tonight, but we're actually switching that to Saturday. And that way, Mike and I can be together. So we're going to be together for our show. So check that out on First Aid Pod at noon on Saturday. So, hello, you guys. So, I am so excited for tonight because we are going to be talking about something that I think everybody can relate to, and that is fear. So, we're going to be talking about what do we do when we are confronted with fear, when we have fearful thoughts, when we want to be doing something that's different and change creates fear. Like a lot of people are afraid of change. And so I want to talk a little bit about the science behind it. But then my favorite part is going to be when you guys are here and having a conversation. So if you're listening to this in the audio version, just know that as per usual with our Wednesdays, it is going to be a little squirrely, a little jumpy because we are going to be pulling up comments from the live audience so we can have a conversation. So just picture that you're in my living room and you're watching the conversations just kind of bounce back and forth. And we always end up getting really great insights and experiences from just a whole bunch of different people. And I think that's what's really magical about this. So let us get started. I'm going to share with you guys a few things that I've learned just in my past readings and in a little bit of research that I did. But it was interesting because the research that I did for the show, I was like, man, okay. I was hoping to find some new information, but I've done a lot of research in the past about it because it is something that I struggle with. And so I'm going to kind of just go through a concise ish in Leigh style, what fear is, what it looks like. And kind of how it shows up. And then I want to give you a strategy that I know works. It works for me. And when I was looking for strategies, it was one that kind of kept coming up. So let us go through this. So, what is fear? So, is it real? Is it just something that's just in your head and you can just kind of wish it away? Yes and no. So, it is a real thing. Now, there's an acronym that I use all the time just to remind myself that it's false evidence appearing real, but it is real. It actually has physical. It shows up in our brain, but we feel it in our body. And so, fear is actually our survival response. Okay, so we need it. It is not something that we don't want to not have it because there are some people in the world that actually don't have the part of the brain. It's called the amygdala. They don't have that part of the brain, or it's not functioning. And that actually causes problems because then they can't sense actual danger. They can't sense actual things that they should be afraid of. And so this is what happens when we feel fear or when we have that response, because this is what happens in our physical body. And I think if you don't know this to be actually science, this is what happens when our amygdala is activated. I want you to understand it because then I want you to realize that you're not making it up. It's for survival. Okay. So as soon as you recognize fear, your amygdala, which is just a small organ in the middle of the brain, that goes to work. It alerts your nervous system, which then sets your body's fear response into motion. Okay. So here are the things that happens. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline are released. Your blood pressure and heart rate actually increase. You start breathing faster. You know these, and you know these almost to feel like sometimes like panic attacks. But this is meant to happen. Your blood flow actually changes. And the reason why all of this is happening is so then blood can actually flow from your heart into your limbs, making it easier for you to start running really fast away from the danger or throwing punches if something, comes and is attacking you. So your body is actually preparing for fight or flight. Now, in our day today, do we really need to be fighting or flighting for most of the things that we're fearful of? No. So that's where it becomes dangerous because it ends up having a negative effect on our body and on our life, right? So if me being nervous and being afraid to come onto the show, that stops me from showing up to you for you guys. But do I actually need to flee from you guys? Do I need to hide from you guys? Do I need to fight with you guys? No, I don't need to do any of this because this isn't real danger for me, but it is scary to go live. It is scary to be doing this. Now, the more that you do it, the easier it becomes, right? So now the other thing that can happen inside of your brain is that because some of the parts of your brain are revving up, there's others that are shutting down. And so this is what happens when our amygdala, that's the part of our brain that is sensing the fear. But then our cerebral cortex, this is the area of the brain that harnesses reasoning and judgment, that actually becomes impaired when we have this fear. So it makes it difficult to make good decisions and to think clearly. And so this shows up if you're at work and you're afraid, if you're afraid about how you're not going to be good enough, you're not going to be this, and you're in this anxious, fearful state, you actually can't perform your best. And so now that is having a negative impact on your life because you're not showing up as your best self, not because there's something wrong with you, but in fact, it's because your brain is functioning the way that it should. Because you don't need to be reasoning. If a tiger is attacking you or coming after you, you don't need to reason that, well, I'm actually bigger than that tiger and I could actually potentially, if I had the right technique. No, now you've been eaten, right? So you don't have to have that logical. You just have to have the ability to have the blood into your legs so then you can run as fast as you can. So then you can get away from the danger. I hope that makes sense. So now there's a big difference. There was something else that I came up with, and in my notes, I want to talk to you guys just really, really quickly that there is a big difference between fear and phobia. Okay. So there are things that you can be afraid of. And so the example that I was listening to or reading about when I was doing the research, it gave a really good example of if you were watching the movie Jaws, okay? And now you have this fear of this fear of going into the water because you just saw it and you're like, "Oh my gosh, a shark is going to come and attack me." That's a fear. That's fine. But you're going to be able to get over that, and I'm going to give you a strategy of how to do that. You're going to be able to get over that because it's not actually a fear, especially if like you have that in like a lake or in a pond and you know that there's no sharks around. It's not rational, but you still have that fear and so you don't want to go into the water. If you have that you're like, now you won't go into any water because of this quote unquote fear, that actually is now a phobia. And phobias are very different than just fears. And so you have to work a lot harder and it's a lot different than just getting over your quote unquote fear. So that's the big difference there. And like I said, fear keeps you safe. So we don't want to get rid of it, but we do want to be able to handle it so then we can kind of keep moving through our day-to-day life. We want to be able to do the things. And you've heard this a million times, but all of the goodness comes on the other side of our comfort zone. And what is on the other side of our comfort zone? Fear. So we need to figure out how to move through that, right? So one of the best ways to do this is for us to be able to interrupt our thoughts. So when we have that fearful thought, we need to be able to remind ourselves that although it feels real, it is actually false evidence appearing real. We need to remember that. And that's actually the acronym of fear. False evidence appearing real, right? FEAR. So now there's a thought around it that's called having an anchor thought. And an anchor thought is something that I've actually done without knowing that there's an actual term about it. And it is so helpful. So The other thing that I want to tell you before I tell you about what an anchor thought is, I also want you to realize that as we were going through all of that what's going on in your body when you feel fear, what does that also sound like? That also sounds like when you're excited. So when you're really excited about something, all the same things happened. So you get all of that blood pumping, you get all of those feelings, and that physiological movement in your body is the exact same thing as excitement, as fear. They're both identical. The only thing that is different is how your brain is perceiving it. So if your brain is perceiving it as danger, then you are going to either fight or flight. You are either going to run or you are going to fight. Okay. But if you can train your brain to know that, no, oh my gosh, yeah, I know this feels like fear, but it's not, it's excitement. And if you can change it to be excited, then you're not going to go into that mode of having to survive. You can just start thriving. You can just start living your life with that. And so that's a distinction that you really have to understand. And that makes it a lot easier. So when you have that fearful feeling coming up, the butterflies, the anxiousness, the sweaty palms, the my underarms get sweaty, like I like it's not pretty when I'm really scared or when I'm really excited. And so you can just remind your brain so then it can feel safe. And if it feels safe, then you're able to go and keep moving through it. So the anchor thought, what this is a thought that you have and you need to come up with what that is. Before you get into the fearful thought, because when you're in the fearful thought, like I said, you cannot logically and have reason. So you're not going to be able to come up, you might be able to, but most times you're not going to be able to come up with an anchor thought in that moment. But let's say that you're afraid of flying. Okay. So if you're afraid of flying, you know that you're going to get scared. You know you're going to have that same fearful thing. You're not going to want to go on the plane. You're going to have to get medicated. You're going to have all of this stuff. So if you can create an anchor thought, and what an anchor thought is something that is usually in the future of once you've gotten past that fear. So you can have a thought about how nice it's going to be and how excited you are to be walking on the beach, and you can picture it and look at pictures and get that thought really clear in your brain and in your mind. So then you can picture it when you have that fearful feeling. And the anchor thought, if you can kind of trick your mind into interrupting that fearful thought. Mel Robbins talks about it. She had a book, it was called the 5-second rule. And basically, that is where whenever you have any kind of thought or when your alarm goes off or you want to do anything, you can shift your thinking by going 5, 4, 3, 2. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And on one, you go and make the action. You get up, you do the thing. You don't even think about it. One happens and you got to move. And so one happens, you think a different thought. And when one happens in this instance, you think of your anchor thought. You think of how excited you are to be walking on the beach. And now you have interrupted the fearful thought. And now you're on the beach and that's what you're thinking about. And you're not thinking, because we can't think two things at the exact same time. You can oscillate between them, but you can't think two thoughts at one time. So now, as you're picturing that anchor thought, you don't have the fearful thought. And now it's giving your body time to relax. And it's giving your body time to think a better thought, to do a better thing, to start getting into the logical where you can make the next move, right? So that is those two things, well, those three things, I guess. The realizing that excitement and fear are going to show up the exact same way. So trick your brain into knowing that this is excitement and not fear. And then interrupt that thought when it comes up, interrupt that feeling when it comes up, and have an anchor thought ready and ready to go. So then you can think about that. If you're public speaking, that's one of the number one fears of many people. Well, think about how good it's going to feel that you did it. And it doesn't matter how it turns out. That doesn't matter. Think about how good you're going to feel that you did it. You got on that stage and you talked, or you went live on Facebook and you never do it, but you really wanted to. Imagine what that's gonna feel like when you get to call up your bestie and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe this. Go on Facebook, check it out. I'm so excited. It's done." That can be your anchor thought. Okay? So, that's enough for the sciency behind it. I really wanted to kind of like dive into that whole part. That is also a big thing for you guys in the audio version. So then it's not super squirrely. But now I want to go into the comments. So I want to see if we have comments. If you are watching, let me make sure. So if you are watching in Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, X, please let's start talking about it. How does fear show up for you? Do you resonate with anything that I just said about fear, how it shows up in your biological body, in your physiological body? Do you resonate with that? Do you get scared for things that you know that you don't want to get scared for? Um, Another amazing example, a really, really good example, and I went to a women's event on Monday night. Was it Monday? It was Monday night. Because this Friday, now, if you're listening to this in the replay or on the audio version, it may not be this Friday, but as we're live recording this, International Women's Day is this Friday. And so there's a lot of events that are happening this week to celebrate. And Monday was an event that was here locally, and it was at our epicenter in our university. And we had three amazing speakers, and I really, really wanted to hear them speak. Uh, but I was really nervous because we've talked about this on the show. I get really nervous going to networking meetings, to anything that's, I know that I'm going to have to be in front of people, which is silly because, well, it's not silly, but people don't understand it because once I start talking, they're like, "You're not an introvert. You're not scared of any of this kind of stuff." But I am every single time. And but I wanted to make sure that I went, and I wanted to go alone. And the reason why I wanted to go alone were twofold. One, I wanted to face my fear. If I keep going to events with friends, then I'm going to sit with my friends, and I'm going to talk with my friends, and I'm going to not network with people and not have to go outside of my comfort zone, right? And that's not helping me grow. I want to always be growing. So that was one of the things. Um, and the second thing is that I wanted to be able to really focus on the speakers. And I know that when I go with people that I know, I'm not as focused on the speakers because I'm focused also on them. So like if they say something and it's like, "Oh my gosh, that was really good." And you it's just not the same experience. So, I went on my own. Now I went and I wanted to be a little bit early because I did not want to walk in late, right? It's a whole room of women, and so I want to make sure that I was there early. So I was. Except for I went to the wrong building because usually group that puts on um this group that puts on events, every single event that I have done in the last 5 years that I have gone with this group has been in the exact same room, in the same building, on the same floor, like, it's right in the same spot. So, it was a no-brainer for me. I parked my car, I walked up leisurely, I was, like, so ready to go. All the doors are locked. Every single door in the building is locked, the lights are out. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, did I get the wrong day?" Check the calendar, nope, it's good. And now when I put it in the calendar, I entered the information manually, and I didn't put down the location because I just assumed, which is one of the worst things that we can do, I assumed I knew where it was, so I put that address in there, and it was not. So then I had to go back to the original thing on their website. Thank goodness it wasn't taken down, even though registration had been closed. And then I was like, "Oh, this is on the other side of the campus. Cool." So now I'm late. Now I'm 3 minutes before the keynote speaker is going to be talking, and they're already in remarks. Like, they're already starting the presentation and talking and like welcoming everybody and going through the agenda and all that kind of stuff. So now part of me, I'm going to tell you 100% as I'm walking through the hallway to get to the auditorium, did it cross my mind? Okay, that's okay. You can just turn around and you don't have to go in. This is going to be like really hard for you to go in. And you know what? You tried. You tried. And that's okay. And you can just try next year for this event and that's okay. I'm sure they're going to have pictures. I'm sure they'll have like overviews. Like you won't miss everything. That's what was going through my head. But then I thought, no, I want. And so then I started thinking about my anchor thought, which truly, until I started doing research for this show, I didn't really understand what an anchor thought was, but I use it all the time. So I know that it works. I was thinking about how excited I was going to be after the event was done and how charged up I was going to be and how empowered I was going to be. And then that changed my entire thinking. I'm going to flee. I'm going to just run away and go in my car and go home to now I'm excited to go in there. And so I went in and the first table was completely full and it was okay because there was an empty seat at the next table. And I just quickly said, "Excuse me, is this taken?" And the girl took her purse off of, which was nervous for me too, because I was like, her purse is there. So obviously she's saving it for someone. She's like, "No, it's open. Please sit down." And then it was one of the best nights I have had in a very long time. And I've had some really amazing events that I've been to, some really amazing nights, but Monday night was very cool. And I would not have got to experience it if I let my fear dictate it. And instead, I changed it to excitement. So, long winded story because I was waiting for comments, but here we go. So, Samantha is here. Hi, Sam. So Sam says, my fear shows up as anxiety in some instances. One of my biggest fears is people waiting on me. And I get so anxious when I'm out in a scenario where someone is in a hurry and needs me to do something quickly. Okay, this is great. So here are a couple of the things that like are coming up in that. The fact that you know that is amazing because I think personally, and you guys, okay, so here, there always comes up something that then I am able to just do my disclaimer because I want to do it on every show. I am not a therapist. I am just your friend sharing my experience as you share your experience. And so we can learn and grow together. Okay. So, disclaimer done. So the fact that you know how your fear shows up, you know what is triggering it is super exciting because that's the first step. If you don't know why it's coming up or you just have these feelings, those could like really lead to panic attacks and debilitating instances because it's a shock. And so you are in a actual fear-based thing because you can't have those anchor thoughts because you don't even know that they're going to come. They're going to blindside you. So the fact that you know that one of them is, okay, if people are going to be waiting on me or people are expecting something from me in a hurry, then I am going to feel this way. I'm going to feel anxious and I'm going to have fear around it. So the two things that I would say with that is one, I can't remember who said this. And if you've ever heard this, please tell me because I can't quote it, but it was actually it might have just been anyway, I don't know who it was. Okay, I'm trying to picture it, but I was going to say Mel Robbins, but I actually don't think it was her. Your how is it said? Your emergency or oh, Tina, are you listening to this? Are you here? Can you like help me with this one? I think you're the one that told me, so I don't know where you got it from. But it was your lack of organization is not my emergency. So if somebody needs you to do something really quickly, it's because they didn't pre-plan usually, right? It's like they weren't ready for it and now they need you to do something quicker to like help them to get them off of whatever for them to be able to hit whatever it is. So, yes, okay. And Sam says someone else's problem is not your emergency. Yes. So, but even, yes, so it's their problem. They need you to move faster. They need you to do this quicker because they asked you last minute, but they need you to show up. And usually they ask the people that they know will show up, right? They know the people like, okay, well, I know that if I ask Sam, Sam is going to do it. Sam shows up every time. Sam's good under pressure. I bet you any money that you get that Sam's good under pressure because they don't see that you're having a panic attack and anxious and fearful and it's like dysregulating your nervous system. They don't see that. They see the result of you getting them out of their issue, right? So remembering that part of it, that this is not your problem. This is not your emergency. So whatever you can do is going to help them, but it's not up to you. That would be one of the things of the refocusing and reframing that. And then being able to, when you have that feeling all coming up and you know that it feels like anxiety, trying to shift that into, okay, you know what? I'm on a deadline. I'm actually excited about this because now it's a game. I'm going to see if I can do it. Because at the end of the day, the majority of our, like, let's be real, right? The majority of our deadlines are self created. They're created by a boss, they're created by a manager, they're created by whatever. And yes, we need to be hitting deadlines. But if you're given a deadline that is not realistic, then do the best that you can do. That's all that we can do. And if you know you're not going to be able to hit it, just be honest and you're worthy enough. That I think is coming up too. I'm doing a lot of like, for me, this is totally personal, but I'm doing a lot of like inner work and I'm realizing that I have a major worthiness issue, major, that like I'm not worthy unless I am fill in the blank. And that fill in the blank is helping people, showing up for people, um, being the good, you know, doing all the good things, being the like there's so many things that unless I'm doing all of this, I'm not worthy. And that's just not true. That's absolutely not true. And so because I have that belief that's like just deep down that was like created probably 40 years ago, then I show up in this perfectionist mode. I show up in this, everything's got to be great. And does it? It just has to be my best. That's all. So I don't know, Sam, I don't know if any of that helped, but this would be like our chats back and forth where it's hopefully by you chatting with me and me chatting with you, something comes or something gets. The thing that I love most about these conversations is that it triggers something else for us. So it's making us look at things a little bit differently, hopefully. And we get what we need out of it. We're all different. So let me know, Sam, if any of that like hit home, if like you think that you would be able to like use any of that reframing um to be able to help you through when these things are happening. The other thing is that like when you say that people are waiting for you and you're anxious, also like think about what that is. Like so I used to be late for everything and really made me anxious. Like I hated being late, but then I was always late. So it was like the thing, which is kind of like that thing that you always focus on, you create. And so because I was like really fearful of being late because I was focusing on it, I actually became late more often than not. Same thing with my weight. I've talked about this on the show before that every single year I talk about losing weight. I talk about I need to lose weight. I don't want to be fat. I like da da da. So I'm always thinking about the number, thinking about weight. And so instead of losing weight, every year I gain weight because I'm focusing on weight. So then I want more of it. My brain thinks, my subconscious thinks I want more of it, right? Because you're focusing on it. And the first year, last year, when I decided that I just wanted to have energy, and I started making decisions around my energy, and that was about my food and my sleep and my water and my movement, I ended up losing the weight. So it's the same thing I think here that if you have this, like you're anxious about not showing up or being late, you become late, you know? Um, because, and then you're not doing things as smoothly. And I might be speaking for myself, but that's what would happen is I was so afraid of being late that I would actually like be putting more pressure on myself so I would actually show up late and then it would just be this like self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing. So Sam also says this is such well, you didn't say such. Okay, let me read this verbatim. This is an interesting topic, especially if you frame it through the lens of motherhood. When a baby or child cries, it activates the mother's fight or flight mode. So if you have a baby who cries a lot, how are you able to shift past this when really it's your body reacting to your child and can't be stopped? Not that I know of yet. Well, okay, so that is gonna be the fact that you have that question. Number 1, I would say research it. Like, not on TikTok and Instagram. I would go on and try to find science-based, even if you look into, I'm sure there's doctors out there that maybe have Instagram or YouTube that makes it easier, I guess, that are focusing on motherhood. Because my guess, and I'm not a mom, so I always give the disclaimer, I am not a mom. I've never been a mom, and I also have no intention of being a mom. So whatever advice I give right now, it is strictly friend to friend of like what I would hope would help, but I also don't know. So, but what I would say is you have a maternal, my baby is crying, and so I want to either really help it, fight it. Um, it's a fear-based thing, right? Because the cry happens and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening? Is my baby sick? Is something wrong? Is whatever." Um, but if your baby is crying a lot, then I think it gives you the ability to be able to start tapping into this reframe and tapping into this ability to be able to, like Mel Robbins says, do the 5 4 3 2 1. So you can at least calm your body 5 seconds. That's all it takes, is to calm it just enough to be able to take a breather and not be in reactive mode all the time. So then your nervous system knows that you're safe and your baby is safe. And then you can go in. And here's the thing that will probably also happen. And again, I don't know, but it's worth experimenting. What I would imagine is if we're able to get to a point that we can do that, when the baby cries, the baby triggers our fear response, we're able to interrupt that fear response and um like kind of reframe it and calm our nervous system. We'll be able to have more logical, rational um reactions to the baby when we go in there, instead of everything being, is she breathing, is she okay, is she choking, is she like, because your brain is going to go to that, like, this is fearful, this is danger, alert, alert, alert. If you can calm, then you can go in and look and be like, oh, is it too hot, oh, did you poop, oh, did you do that, okay, let's take care of that. You know what I mean? Now, you're also, as a mom, sleep deprived. You're also all over the place. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that your own safety and your own like basic needs as a mom are probably not being met, because that's not the way that like North America, like that's not the way the majority of our moms are. Our moms are, I'm going to take care of my babies and then I'll be able to take care of myself later on. So you're not sleeping, you're not drinking your water, you're not getting the movement. If you're not doing all these things, then your nervous system is super dysregulated anyway, and so that will be really hard to do. But I think it's worth experimenting and at least researching. And Sam, if you do research that, I know that you're going to be doing a podcast, which is really really awesome. And so I'm sure this is going to be one of the topics that you'll be able to talk about there in a more educated way, because I'm sure you'll do research with it, fear and motherhood, and under that lens. Um, but that I think would be really interesting to see how other moms do it, because other moms are able to do it. But that's a learned skill. That is absolute, like all of this. This is all learned, and we have to keep learning and doing and practicing and experimenting and switching and pivoting and all those things. It would be so nice just to be able to give the manual that, hey, here's a thing that works. Just do that. Just pick that up at the store and then just wear that shirt or that hat and you're going to be good, you know? Okay, so Facebook users set, and hope that helps and didn't make it worse. Let me know. Facebook user, hello. It says, oh, I knew you were going platinum. Looks awesome. Who is this? Who knew that I was going platinum? Because I put it on in our Facebook group and I just wanted to see, like, what are people going to think? Because I told them that I was changing something with my hair. And Okay, so let me go back to this one too. Hold on just one second. Facebook user says, "Love your new hair color." Yes, thank you, Facebook users. So I put it in the Facebook group like, "Hey guys, I just did my hair. Guess what color?" And like usually when women ask that, it's like ombre. Did you go lighter? Did you go darker? Did you go blonde? Did you go, brunette? Not my people. My people know me. They were like, "Purple? Did you get pink? Is it green for St. Patrick's Day? What did you do? Is there blue?" There were a lot of blues and a lot of purples. And when I went into this is totally a sidebar. This has nothing to do with fear. Actually, it kind of does. When I went into my hairdresser today, she was laughing as soon as I walked in and she's like, "Woman, in the last 3 days, these are the texts that I got. I just want to remind you. You started with, 'I'm going to go black. Do you have time?'" Because I was actually just going in to get my hair cut because I was trying to embrace the gray and brown, like just the natural color of what I had. And so I was like, "Do you have time to do color if I come in for my haircut appointment, if I just do black?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, I have time for you." So that was like 3 days ago. And then 2 days ago, I was like, "Hey, actually, would you have time if I did pink, purple, and blue? If I did all of those together?" Like, so she laughed at that point and was like, "Yes, I let me check." So she checked and she's like, "Yes, I'll have it. It's double processing, but I will have time for you. So yes, come on in and we'll get it done." And then this morning, I was like, "Hey, if I just get the color closest to my gray that I have in my hair right now, would you be able to do my whole head that way?" So I went literally from one side of the spectrum, black, to white, and everything in between in the last 3 days. So everybody in the Facebook group was all like green, purple, blue. Oh, it was so cool. But it is like platinum. It's got gray, it's white, blonde, white with silver tone and violet tone, undertone or something like that. So it is as close to my natural gray as possible, but believe it or not, the thing that I didn't like about my natural hair was not the gray. It was the mousy brown. I've never liked my natural mousy brown hair. It doesn't look like me. Like I'm very much a jewel tone type of person. I'm very like drastic. Like I don't like light blues. I don't like light pinks. I like the vivid colors or the jet black or the white. And so I just went and embraced the whole gray. And so here we are. So anyway, total aside, but thank you, Facebook users. I feel so good. I'm so happy with it. Okay, so Sam says, "I read the 5-second rule a long time ago. That's a good idea. I'll try it." Awesome. And if you have the book, it's like any of these self-help books, they become shelf help if we don't actually start applying it. So that's why I really like to go back to these books that we've read that we know sounded good in theory. And then being able to pull those out as resources so then we can remember the tools that were inside of them. Because if they're just shelf help, they're not doing anything for us. We need to be implementing them in order to make them worthwhile. Otherwise, they're just like a novel, right? It's just a story that I read and it sounds pretty good. So I'm glad that you read it, Sam. I really do hope that it works. And Sam, I really want you to like come back and let us know, or in the Facebook group, let us know if it worked. Test it out. Um, as you guys know, if you're just listening to this for the first time, you're going to hear me say experiment all the time because life, I think, is an experiment. I think we can take all of these things, the experts, there's certain things that are just it's kind of universal. Um there are some things that absolutely work for everybody. Um there's outliers that it might not work for, right? Like vegetables are good for everybody. Now, the amount of vegetables, the type of vegetables, the way that the vegetables are um cooked, if they're raw, if they're steamed, if they're whatever, that is the experiment. It's the experiment for you knowing that vegetables are good for you, but what vegetables are good for you and you and you and me. Like it's different for all of us. I have friends that have Crohn's that cannot have broccoli and lettuce and things like that because ends up jacking up their system. So you would think that, oh, all greens are good for everybody, and it's not. Some people can't digest it. So that's where the experiments come. And Crohn's is not a great example because you don't really want to be experimenting that much, especially when you're in flare. But that's why they have like the elimination where you eliminate everything and then you slowly introduce things back. And that's the experiment part. So, same thing with movement. Movement is universally great for everybody. But what does that movement look like? I will never run again. I sometimes want to run. It's not good on my knees. I know that it's not good for my future. It it's not one of those things. But then I have girlfriends that like thrive when they're running. They feel so good when they're running and their knees are fine. And so that's what they do. But it's all an experiment. So, Sam, when you experiment with this, I'd love to know what works, what didn't work, and what you're going to be trying next. So that's what I really want for this podcast, for our Facebook group, for our Patreon. I really want this to be a community where we're all just sharing what's working and what's not working. Because if I share with you what works for me, you might want to experiment with it and it might work for you. Or you might hear what Sam tried and like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. I'm going to try that and maybe that will work for you. So that's what I want for all of us. When it comes to the sphere, not the sphere, this fear that we're talking about, I think one of the best things is really trying to reframe it, and asking yourself, is it rational for you to be in fear of this thing? Because if you might live in a really bad neighborhood, and when I say bad, I just mean that there's a lot of crime outside your door. Okay, if there's a lot of crime, not that the news or people are talking about, but that that if you go out there at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning by yourself, it's not a good idea. You don't want to like, how can I reframe this and go out there and I'm going to feel excited instead of fearful? No, your fear response is proper. Your fear response is telling you don't go down that dark alley by yourself when you're hearing that people are down there. Like, those are the things that you get that feeling of fear, use it to your advantage and go, right? But ask yourself, is this fear rational? And is it serving me? Is it protecting me? And if it's not protecting you and it's not putting you in the position that you want to be in, if it's not going to lead you down the path for where you want to go, then that's where you want to start incorporating some of these tools and some of these tactics for having to combat it. Now, unfortunately, I was really hoping that Ed was going to be here because Ed, who's here every week, um, he is the reason why we're doing it on fear today because he is in our Patreon, and that's what I'm loving about Patreon. One of the like little perks there is that you get to help kind of develop um the show and suggest ideas for future shows, and this is what he suggested because he's in a very big um transition in a lot of parts of his life right now, and that is fearful. It's exciting, but it's also the unknown, and we're afraid of the unknown. And he's switching a job, he's switching cities, he's switching houses, he's switching everything. Like, this man is switching everything up, and that is scary, but he's taking the leap. He's taking the leap in all of it, and he's been giving tips to me of what he's been trying and he's been experimenting with for the last couple of weeks, and I think it's really, I was really hoping that he was going to be here. So Ed, if you're listening to this in the replay, um come on over to Facebook or to YouTube. I can't remember where you watch. I think you watch on Facebook, and go in the replay and um put your comments as if you're listening to this live, because then those will show up for everybody else and we can continue the conversation throughout the week because I think this is really an important conversation. And we'll continue it down the road. Fear is going to weave in and out of a lot of these conversations. Same with worthiness, and same thing with everything when we talk about all of our happy in our in the Facebook group. So our health, our affection for ourselves, our purpose, our partnerships, and our youthfulness, fear, it goes in all of them. All of them, there is a potential of fear. In the health, I'm afraid of like what my actions have been doing and what my health is going to be like. I'm afraid of, if I do this massive workout, am I going to hurt myself? I'm afraid like there's so many things that can come up with health and fear. With affection for ourselves, we have like one of the biggest things that we can do to show ourselves that we care for ourselves and that we love ourselves is working on this fear, that when it comes up, we nurture it and we say, hey, you know what? I'm actually safe. Thank you so much for trying to protect me. Body, mind, nervous system. Thank you so much for trying to protect me, but you actually don't have to. You don't have to protect me right now. I'm okay. We're safe. We're excited. Um, and then our purpose, leading into our purpose is sometimes really scary because what are people going to think? Or am I good enough? Or, it's different. I haven't done this. That's fearful. How are we going to work into that? Our partnerships with people, with strangers, with, am I going to be able to have that conversation with my husband? What is he going to think if I tell him that I'm not happy about something, or that I need this? Am I going to sound needy? We have all of these things, right? And then youthfulness, we want to be curious. We want to be carefree. We want to be all these things, but then fear stops us. How am I going to look? How are people going to perceive me? Is this silly? Am I too old? Like all this is all fear based. So this conversation I think is going to continue. I'm so happy for all of you guys that were here. And Sam, especially, thank you for bringing all of this up because this is my favorite part. I absolutely love having the conversations with you guys. That's what makes this show. That's why it's called the Friend Leigh Show, because I'm your friend and I just want to be here for you because I know you're going to be there for me. And that is it. So if you're listening to this in the podcast version and the audio version, thank you so much. And I really hope that next Wednesday you come over to YouTube or Facebook or Twitch and you share your thoughts and your feelings and your experiences with us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, you guys, and happy International Women's Day if you're watching it before Women's Day. Love you. Bye.